The infinite game is actually about humans more than anything else. If you want to be an infinite company, you have to be really good at leading and managing humans, because humans are what make companies go.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Business is Human. Today we have Loren Padelford, the General Manager of Revenue at Shopify. Loren, what's going on, man?
Hey, Scott. How's it going? Good to be here.
It's going good. I'm pretty sure that I would say at least a couple times a week I'm buying something from some small business out there who is using Shopify. So it is pretty amazing what you guys have put into the world.
Thank you from all the small businesses in the world for shopping local, shopping direct. I think that's important. Yeah, I mean, we believe that entrepreneurism is a force for economic good, a force for social good. And so we work every day and have been since the inception of Shopify to help entrepreneurs live out their dreams, get to customers, and be successful. So it's a fun experience. Entrepreneurs are amazing to just hang out with. So yeah, it's been very exciting, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, I mean, it has been exciting. We were reviewing some of the stats for your business this year, and everything from moving to over $100 billion market cap to just the growth in the payments business. It must be a very, very exciting time for you. But looking back on your tenure, you're kind of an OG, Loren. You've been there almost, it looks like 7 years if my LinkedIn calculus is correct.
Yeah, it's about 6.5. So I started in 2014, just before we went public. And it's been quite a ride over that 6.5 years.
Today, this vision of bringing businesses online, helping entrepreneurs put their products into the world, is that what the business was 6.5 years ago?
If you know the origin story, which is Toby wanted to sell snowboards online and started Snow Devil, and then realized very quickly that the only people who could put a business online were very big companies with very deep pockets. And that seemed crazy because it's an impediment to new businesses starting. So Toby, being a software developer, decided to solve this problem for himself, and then ultimately ended up solving it for entrepreneurs around the world. So I think what we describe ourselves internally and externally is we're trying to bend the curve down to make entrepreneurism easier so that anyone can be an entrepreneur. Anybody can start a business in a single day. A lot of people start them in a couple hours and can sell globally so that any entrepreneur, regardless of how much money they have, how much capital, whether they have investment or not, can look, sound, and act like any major corporation. And I think that drives a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. But it also creates opportunity for those businesses, opportunity for the communities they work in, opportunities for employment. And fundamentally, our global economies are built off of small businesses. And so if you don't have a healthy small business community, a healthy independent business community, you don't have a healthy economy. So ultimately, we believe that what we're trying to do is drive economic prosperity, and doing that with entrepreneurs. And so I think what we've continued to just focus on is what is the challenges to starting something, and chip away at those challenges and just remove those challenges one after the other and make it easier and easier and easier to start and manage something. And the more we do that, the more entrepreneurs seem to like it and seem to want to try things. And I think, our track record for ourselves, but also our community, our ecosystem, is proof that entrepreneurism is alive and well.
That's amazing. I love that mission. I mean, I obviously love entrepreneurship based on what I'm doing with my career. But I think one of the interesting things that I've observed with Shopify is that, you guys actually also work with a lot of big brands. And I think that there's this moniker in business that we're running a SaaS company. A lot of the people that we have on the show are SaaS companies. And there's kind of this either or, where you're either serving SMBs or you're going up market. And you guys have been able to seemingly do both quite successfully. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Market segmentation is a lie, right? it sounds good. And I think if you're a legacy application that was created in the 80s and 90s, you want to keep this lie going because it perpetuates your pricing model. But it's not true. Like, have you ever met a customer who really wanted to migrate to a new platform? Like who woke up and was like, you know what we should do? We should just migrate and spend a huge amount of time and money to get to a new software platform. No. Like no one wants to do this. They want to focus on their business. But software companies, and especially the big five, the software mafia, as I like to call them, have created basically a perfect system where they've convinced everybody that if you're big or getting big, you need to get off of whatever software you are using and buy one of their big, heavy, pointless applications that take 10 years to implement and never work anyways. And then they've gotten their consultants on board to convince the board of directors that that's also true. That, you're big now and you have to use big software and that's just expensive. So you should start capitally allocating budgets so that you can pay for all this crap. And then when it doesn't work, you should spend even more money trying to get it to work. In one hand, you got to give it to them. It's kind of beautiful in how ridiculous it is. But it is a lie, right? Like it's just not true. Like customers should be able to buy an application and use it forever. And I think that's what we're showing to the world is like, there is no reason you can't have an application, a SaaS platform like Shopify that you can start on, you can start your company and it'll just scale with you. It'll solve problems throughout the stages of development of your business. And so, yes, so this is what Shopify is. I started 6.5 years ago to start Shopify Plus, which is the extension of Shopify. It's like, hey, we had very successful customers. Think Fashion Nova, Allbirds, Rothy's, this kind of stuff, who had grown up and had really great ideas. And so got very large. And inevitably, they had come to us and said, well, I guess we need to re-platform now. We're big. So this is great. High fives to everybody. We love you guys. We hate leaving. But I guess this is what companies do, is we re-platform to the mid-market or we re-platform to the enterprise application. And we sat around going, like, why? That makes no sense, right? If you love us and this is great and you're growing, like, why would you leave? And they're like, but isn't that what you're supposed to do? We're like, well, no, we'll just give you the stuff you need and keep going here. And so we built Plus to do that. It's just extend the runway. It's like, just keep going, right? You can stay here and keep going. So I think a lot of SaaS platforms today are proving that exact same thing is, hey, just because it's good for small companies doesn't mean it's bad for big companies and vice versa. It just, you fundamentally have to look at it from a problem set. Keep solving the problems. So bigger organizations move up the problem curve. And so they have more employees, they have more, complexity, but there is no reason why you can't have a platform where you start and stay forever. And I think we see that. So our largest customers are well over $1 billion in revenue on their online stores. They have multiple stores around the world. They are publicly traded. So I think, I give credit to the software mafia for creating the Matrix version of software, where everyone's asleep and has no idea what's happening to them. But it's over now. Like they're in the downward spiral. No one's paying ridiculous sums to run software anymore. It's just not the world we live in. So it's been a good run, but I think it's over.
Yeah, it is really interesting. A couple things stick out to me. I think there is just generally a habit of what I've observed from executives, people inside of companies where they just do what they did at their last company. And that's kind of it's like, okay, now it's time to re-platform. It's time to run X play because that's what we did before, contrasted with, true original thinking. The other thing is the app ecosystem. Frankly, like that is a moat for a lot of those big companies where it's, well, if we want to use X with Y, we need to move over to, Z platform. And you guys did a very, very good job of building that app ecosystem. It seemed like pretty early. The interesting thing was, though, in terms of really kind of monetizing it and putting gates around it, it seems like that was actually a choice that you guys decided to be patient with.
No software company lives alone, right? Like there's no application that is by itself in the ecosystem of a customer. We all play together. right? Like software applications are a constellation of tools and features that a customer needs to fulfill all the challenges that they have in their business or take advantage of their opportunities. So I think we recognized very early that we were never going to be alone, right? We weren't going to build every single feature. We weren't going to solve every single problem, not in any near-term scenario. And our customers needed those solutions now. And so instead of just play the all or nothing game, right, we played a much longer game, which was, hey, let's make our application, our platform open so that you can get access to it. You can build on top of it. You can extend its functionality. You can fill all the gaps that we were going to have, we still have, and you could give customers more and more power off of the core, central app. And I think what we saw is that other software companies really loved that because they could then tap into us and we could build together. We could build a community. We could help entrepreneurs together. But it also became ultimately a really big economic opportunity for those app developers. And so today our app ecosystem generates far more revenue than Shopify does. Off of the same kind of customer base. And so I think that is an example of you can kind of treat the world like it's all supposed to be yours, or you can treat the world like a community, and entrepreneurism is a community and software is a community. And so that ability, I think, has rapidly expanded our own opportunity because I'll give you another, component of it, which is less talked about, but as relevant, is that app community was also out selling their own apps to their customers and bringing customers into the Shopify ecosystem. So it was a kind of like subtle extension of our own sales and marketing activity through thousands of additional companies. And so the number of merchants that we could get to engage with and support expanded exponentially off of the activities of our partners. And so we were the beneficiary of their flywheels on top of our own flywheel, which I think created the momentum that you see. So I think it's silly for companies to think zero sum, that it's just like build for yourself and make sure you're sorted out. The world's a big place and your customers need to solve lots of problems. And so the better you integrate and the better you partner and the better you work with others, the faster you become essential in a market.
Yeah, I think Shopify's focus on the entrepreneur and really removing all the barriers to entry and starting a business is abundantly clear. And it's really why I love the company so much. I've been a customer of Shopify myself and have been absolutely blown away by the amount that you guys have invested in customer enablement with things like Shopify Academy. And really just the rich ecosystem of solutions and applications that are beautifully integrated into the solution like you just touched on. And I also just completely agree with that last point, Loren, in that there's never a shortage of jobs to be done. And seeking to solve all those by yourself will lead to a ton of duplication of work and slower progress. My question for you is, when you guys look at what is going on right now in terms of what you've already solved for, what is the next frontier of problems or jobs to be done for an aspiring entrepreneur? And how is Shopify addressing them today? And second, when I hear you guys talking about the way you view the world and the right ways of doing business, it just seems like you guys have a very different perspective from a certain competitor of yours. And I just wonder, how are you working this, mission and value set into your messaging and using it to grab market share from the large incumbent who won't be named?
The next frontier is actually way more obvious than I think people think. I think they think there's some kind of like Wizard of Oz futurism baked into our strategy, but our strategy is way simpler than that. If you think about it in a day, an entrepreneur, a small business owner, an independent business owner, whatever it is, right, wakes up every day and goes to sleep every day. We need to solve every problem between those two events. And so if you're thinking about a merchant and the things they have to do, so, you have to be able to sell products and market them. You have to be able to ship things, create shipping labels. You have to take returns. You have to interact with customers and do customer support. You have this myriad of things you've got to manage. And so if you look at Shopify's history, we're just clipping them off, right? One after the other. And that's going to continue because like that's our job, is keep making it easier and easier to be an entrepreneur, to be a retailer, to be a merchant, whether that's online or off. So, when people ask about our strategy, yeah, you can see us. We are making big investments in fulfillment, being able to ship things because, once you bought something, you want it. And, for small merchants, that's a challenge because they don't have the resources to do what large merchants do. And so we want to make that easier. We want to make that more effective, more cost effective, and faster. Things like returns we want to make easier. International, everyone wants to expand and sell all over the world. And so we want to make all those things, duties, taxes, all the stuff that comes with being a company is what we're trying to make easier and easier step by step. And so I think it telegraphs our strategy because it's just continually focusing on the needs and the challenges of those entrepreneurs, regardless of their scale. No company lives in a world without competition. Right? Anyone who acts like they do is fooling themselves. And I don't think there's a huge amount of value in over-indexing to any particular competitor, because then you start trying to behave like them instead of doing the best work you can for your own customers and building the best products and all that kind of stuff. And so you can get very distracted from your own strategy by chasing around competitor behavior. And I think one of the things that is true is like Shopify has been successful because we've held a very core principle to heart in everything we do. Make sure it's good for the merchant. And in a lot of cases, make sure it's good for the merchant, even when it's potentially not great for us. And so it's a very long strategy, right? So the infinite game, for those of you that haven't had any familiarity with this, there's a concept of finite games and infinite games. Finite, this is very simplistic. Read the book, it's much more explicit. But finite games are things that you can win. Okay, so like sports is a finite game. Clear set of rules, clear engagement model, everyone knows who's playing, and at the end, somebody won. Right? War is kind of, is another kind of finite game. Infinite games don't have winners. They just perpetuate over time. Business is an infinite game. So you play to just keep playing. And so in that model, you have to think about customers. You have to think about your employees very differently. If this is just zero sum, if I do all this, I will win, I will be the bet, you lose. Now, you might not lose in the near term, right? But you will lose in this infinite cycle. And so I think we've always looked at our role as we are here to support the needs of our merchants, even if in the short term that has some negative impact on us, like we sacrifice a revenue opportunity, we sacrifice a market extension opportunity, whatever. We want to err on the side of what's good for our customers, because if we keep doing that, our customers will reward us for that consistently over time. They will be more loyal with us. They will help us. They will create community with us, and that will help us continue to play, right? And continue to be important in their lives over time. And you can see other organizations who don't have that philosophy. What they do is they optimize for themselves. And so it looks good because it's like, look at how impressive their numbers are. And it's like, but you can read between the lines and also hear the rhetoric from their customers about getting screwed constantly, right? Getting taken advantage of. It's like it. Yes, they have customers, but those customers are always tense. It's always it's adversarial. It's like you have customers who are also in a fight with you. Like that's a shitty way to live, right? And so I think this is our approach, which makes us valuable to the market and gives us our opportunity. Is we keep just saying, look, what's good for Shopify is what is good for our merchants. Period. Full stop. And so let's do what's good for our merchants. Let's build the products they need. Let's deliver the services they need. Let's interact with them in the way that they need. And over time, and the time horizons are long, we'll get what we want, right? Which is growth and revenue and the ability to keep going.
I think the balance of power is shifting where call it the software mafia, used to be able to get away with that behavior. But I think their game is becoming increasingly more finite as, frankly, it just becomes easier to build competing applications that customers need, that companies want. And I love your approach. I heard a quote recently. I subscribed to this newsletter from this guy, Oren Hoffman, who is a CEO of a company called SafeGraph. Before that, I think it was LiveRamp, or one of these ad tech companies that, did really well. And he said the smartest people think 10 days ahead and 30 years ahead. And smart people, they do think 5 years ahead. The smartest people have a much longer time horizon in terms of how and where they invest.
Yeah, if you optimize to revenue, you lose. You win in the short term and lose in the long term. Because in order to optimize to revenue, which is most of what the software mafia does, is optimize to their own revenue growth, whether that's acquisitive, or just how they price themselves or how they interact with customers. Like you think about, especially the enterprise mafia, you think about their pricing models. They're unbelievably dense and impossible to understand. They've built software that's impossible to use to drive the pricing model, right? Like it's clearly built to benefit themselves and not their merchants. It's actually built to hurt their merchants if you look at it coldly. And in the short term, that works. So they've existed for decades. But in the long term, it all goes to zero, because eventually your customers revolt, right? Eventually someone shows up in the market who's not playing that game. And, this is why I liken it to The Matrix a lot. The movie The Matrix. That group has created this perfect kind of system where everyone's kind of asleep. They just go through the motions. Everyone gets paid. The consultants are in on it. Everyone, it's like this perfect closed system until Morpheus and Neo show up, right? And it's just like, once you see the other world, it's impossible to unsee. And so what happens in every market is you got to be worried about the fact that someone's going to play a different game than you. And I think we're in that space now where there's a whole bunch of companies, Shopify is one, but there's a whole bunch of companies who are playing a different game, who are looking at it and saying, hey, I want to do what's good for customers. I'm going to price this in a way that, hey, everyone's benefiting from it, but we're not trying to gouge customers. We're going to make it easy to use, easy to deploy, easy to maintain, easy to upgrade, all these kinds of things, which no one had done for the previous 20 years. And now everyone who's in that sleepy mode is starting to wake up and being like, wait, what's happening here? Why am I paying these idiots $100 million a year for my software? This is nuts. And the migration's on, right? And so it's on. This isn't an opinion. You just go look at the migration numbers coming off of the big 5 enterprise companies. It's staggering how fast they're getting stripped down by SaaS applications and startups and stuff like that. And it's just, they fundamentally miscalculated. They thought they had it sorted and they didn't have to worry about anything. They thought their board level relationships meant something. And the truth is, customers will go where it's beneficial. Customers will go where they see someone who's trying to work for them, not against them. And this generation of software companies that we're all in, we're playing a different game. We have different outcomes in mind. And it's the best competitive moat. Because I've often said to sales reps and to customers, I was like, the challenge they're going to have is philosophical, not execution. They can't even understand what we're trying to do, let alone how to do it against us. Because in their worlds, this idea that you would do something that may negatively or delay a revenue stream is insanity, right? You'd never do that in their space, right? And so they just sit there staring at their keyboards, trying to figure out how to be like the next generation of software. And they can't do it because they just mentally don't live in this world. And so it's what I tell people a lot is you want to win, look, sound, and act differently than everybody else. If you show up and play the game that they've been playing for 50 years, you lose. You can't beat them at this game. You can beat them at a game they don't understand. So, again, if you go like, they're all playing finite games, just play infinite games. Right? Just change the narrative.
Loren, this is where the mic has just been dropped. And that is such a profound insight. And I love it so much because I don't only think it's a recipe for, creating a winning business, but, it is frankly just, I think, creating a better world for all of us to live in when companies behave this way. I'm thinking of a company in particular. There's all of these businesses where the more successful you get, the tighter the noose around your neck, which really just sucks to be a customer of those companies. And we are a customer of a bunch of them. And it's really unfortunate. And it does, to your point, create a sense of tension where it's like, oh, we're more successful. God, I gotta pay them upgrade seats, and this sucks.
That is, if there are founders out there or people looking for opportunities, find every one of those companies. There's your disruption point. There's your opportunity. Anyone who's still acting like that is begging to be destroyed.
Yeah,
it's crazy, right? I'll give you an example, right? That Shopify is, I hate contracts. Contracts are stupid. Having a customer sign a long-term agreement is the dumbest thing I've heard in a long time. And everyone's like, well, what do you mean? Well, let's be clear on what a contract is. A contract is a protection mechanism for the company who's issuing it. That's all it is. It's to cover my ass. It's to force you to do things you don't want to do in the scenario where you don't like me anymore. All right. I mean, I get it, right? I get, why legally you'd want that or financially you'd want that. But no, that's not good for the customer because it locks them into something that may not be good for them in the future. And so what I'd rather do is I'd rather you be here because you want to be here, not because you have a contract. So, Shopify has, we have terms of service, but that's just to govern people not doing anything illegal on the platform. And technically, Shopify Plus has a 1-year contract. But I don't care about that. If a customer comes to me and says, I hate you, I hate this platform, I want to leave, cool, man, leave. High fives, right? I'll help you. Because, if this isn't the place for you, I'd rather you go find the place that's good for you. Why? Because in the future, this might be the place for you again. And so why should I make this very difficult for you to come and go? I should make this really easy for you to come and go because I'm here forever. And so if this isn't the right time, that's okay. Tomorrow might be the right time. And if I can't show you why I'm the right platform, a contract shouldn't keep you here. This is one of those instances where it's like, most people listening would be like, that's crazy. I can never convince my company to get rid of contracts. It's like, well, what game do you want to play? Contract, it's just a gun at someone's head saying you can't leave because you got to owe me all this money. There's contract break fees. There's termination clauses. It's like, yeah, great. Right? In a long game, it's irrelevant. And that's one of those things that seems hard, but is actually easier than you think. And good luck, enterprise mafia, competing with that.
Yeah.
Because they can't even, their lawyers would just never allow them to do these kinds of things because they're oriented to the wrong stuff. So I think there's examples like this everywhere, little things you can do that are customer oriented that totally change the dynamic and start to move you towards a much longer term set of outcomes.
One of the things I think is kind of an imperative for the world that you're talking about is staying close to the customer, understanding what people need, how they want to buy, where there's opportunity to provide a differentiated product or service that is more customer-centric. And in a podcast with Tim Ferriss, Toby basically said, and I quote, "Distance to the front lines has probably killed more companies than many other forces that people would immediately think about when talking about disruption." How do you guys put this in practice today at Shopify?
The shortest answer is constantly talking to customers. And so at all levels, we're all engaged with our customers and our partners and our ecosystem on a like highly regular basis. So, I talk to multiple customers a week. And it's almost always feedback related. It's like what's working, what's not working. Now, there is a truth of if you want generational customers, and what I mean by generational customers that are with you throughout your life cycle and theirs. They are bought into the idea of what you're doing and are helping you build while you help them build, right? It's this coexistence over time. And if you want that, you can't always say yes. You have to learn how to how to get into a conversation with your customers that says, I'm not building you that thing that you said you wanted. Because that's not the best solution. Or I'm not going to do that. Someone else should do that for you. You have to get into a conversation with customers around reality. And so customers have their own needs in mind a lot, and they want to do specific things, and they're constantly asking you for additional features and upgrades and services and all this kind of stuff. And the only way to have long-term customers is to develop a cadence that says what you can and can't do, what you will and won't do. So I'm going to say this in a more simple way. I think companies fail a lot by saying yes all the time, especially early stage companies, because they're like, oh, I got to say yes because I got to get this big logo. I got to get this big customer. That's the death sentence, right? Because the moment you say yes to everything that giant customer wants you to do, you've basically become a custom software shop for that company. And it'll be impossible to maintain. It'll drain all of your resources, and you'll never actually be able to serve other customers in the right way. Now, really hard to do in the moment because it's like, oh man, we need the money, we need to keep going, all these kinds of things. But I have found that, to be close to a customer is also to be very truthful with a customer. What you are and what you aren't, what you will and what you won't do, right? What you need from them. And most of the time, that just requires transparency. It requires candidness. Mr. Customer, I want to help you. I really do. And here's what I can help you with. But here's what I can't do. And here's why I can't do it. I can't build you all these custom features because I don't know how I'm going to maintain them over time. And my desire is for you to be successful more than it is for you to pay me and more than it is to have your logo with me. And if I can't figure out how to make you successful, why would I do it? And more importantly, why would you do it? So, I think these are hard conversations that most companies shy away from, but it is fundamentally how you stay close to your customers because you learn that it's a two-way street, not a one-way street. If they really believe you're the platform for them, they're going to invest time and effort in you and vice versa. But you're not just going to do what each other wants. You have to find that balance. And I think most companies just focus on landing the logo. So we have it in Shopify. We celebrate how many times we tell customers no. So everyone has their logo slides and they're like, oh man, look at all these cool customers that we have. We have another set of logo slides is look at all these customers we said no to, that we just said, no, it's not us. You should buy somebody else. And the irony, of course, is most of those customer logos are the biggest companies in the world, which everyone would be like, how did you say no to them? I can't make them successful. What they want is not who we are. They want me to custom build them a lot of stuff. I said no. And they were like, well, we'll go get company X to do it. I said, okay, cool. Good luck. I hope that works. Right?
They probably wanted more after that.
Well, and so here's the thing. After 6.5 years, I remember when we started Plus, so many people, like honestly, like everybody I talked to was like, this won't work. You can't operate in the enterprise like this. It's not going to work. You're going to have to become like these enterprise companies. And I was like, cool. We'll see. And I had companies who would call us and they'd be like, what? No, we're not doing this. This is crazy. You're out of your mind. We're an enterprise company. You must do these things that these other enterprise companies said are the standard. Right. And I was like, yeah, we're not doing that. So we're a different company. We operate differently. We're not going to do this. So understand, but I'm here forever. So if you ever change your mind, call me back. So in the first couple of years, right, people are like, that's a crazy strategy. You're going to lose all these customers. So I was like, maybe. And then about year 3, they all started to call back. And the conversations were great because it was exactly what you would think they are. They're like, man, we tried that other thing. It sucked. God, what a terrible life that lives over there. I was like, I know, it sucks, right? Anyways, and they're like, maybe we should try this thing you're saying. We're scared and we don't understand, but like, let's try. And so they dip their toes and they try. And then they're like, holy crap, this thing is real. And so the number of customers that said no in the first 2 years that are now on Shopify is massive. We continue to do it every year. Just some customers come and what they want from the world is not who we are. And so we just politely help them find the best solution and say, someday we'll come back around and eventually you'll all be on Shopify.
Yeah, and to pull from Infinite Game, I mean, I think this is a big kind of the abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset, I think underpins exactly what you're talking about. Great. There's plenty more big companies that get it today and plenty more will get it tomorrow.
Everyone's markets are huge, right? Like we're in a global market. Everyone's markets are huge. Every thin slice market you can come up with is a market of tens of thousands of customers. Like full stop. Like you can't actually come up with, I only know this now because like working at Shopify, you get the behind the scenes view of every micro market in the world. And you think, oh man, this super subculture market nobody has ever heard of must be tiny. And then you realize it's freaking massive and there are multiple $100 million companies sitting inside of it. And you're like, how is this true? And the answer is at a global scale, the markets are massive. And so companies get myopic very fast and they start counting their opportunities in tens instead of what they really are. And so they over-index to the one person who's talking to them today. And so I like to talk in math a lot. So mathematically speaking, any market, especially in technology, is rolling around 3 years, meaning that every single customer will go back to the market for new technology once every 3 years because things change that fast. And so 30% of your market's looking for what you're selling at any one time. And so your job is to very rapidly figure out which 30% it is. And so the only way to do that is to say no to 70% of them. Is to just like rapidly move through the market. It's like, make sure you know who you're talking about. So identify who that market is. It's much larger than you think. Stop thinking it's only this small group. And then hammer through saying no to them very quickly. So you can get to the 30% who's actually looking at stuff. What most companies do is they talk to anybody who's willing to talk to them. And that they spend a huge amount of time on stuff that'll never happen. Like they're never getting these deals because those customers they're not actually in the market. They're just curious. And so it's just like, no. Teach an organization to really identify who its actual maximal market is. So like, Shopify's like prime example of this. When Bessemer invested in Shopify right before, like early on, Bessemer had an investment note to its partners that said the max number of online stores in the world will only ever be 70,000. 70,000. Shopify has over 1 million customers at this point. This was one of the best VCs on planet Earth, and their best target was 70,000. People vastly underestimate their markets all the time because they're caught up in talking to the 2 or 3 companies who are talking to them instead of figuring out, like, are those companies real and moving on to another set of potential prospects. And so, the markets are huge. It's okay to say no. It's actually liberating to say no. It's good for your culture. It's good for the business. And you're better off finding the customers who are aligned with you philosophically than the ones who are willing to pay you.
Amen. I feel like I just saw like 3 years of business lessons flash before my eyes that I learned the hard way at Troops.
Loren, hearing you talk about that market selection piece and really just zeroing in on finding the third of the market that's looking for a new solution is fascinating, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, it really just proves the importance of saying no. It takes courage as a sales rep to really say no and move on to the next opportunity, understanding that that the timing just isn't aligning. As we move to the lightning round, I usually have questions that I plan on asking before these conversations, but given everything you've talked about, I feel like there's been a massive common theme here, and that would be long-term thinking. And I think it relates to a topic that I've been fascinated by recently, which is this idea of short and high time preference, which, there was actually an experiment run by a couple of social psychologists. I think it was 30 or so years ago, where it was called the marshmallow experiment, where there would be 2 kids and they asked this group of kids, either you can have a marshmallow or a chocolate today, or you can wait till tomorrow and get 2 chocolates. And so the people that would select the chocolate today were essentially exhibiting a high time preference, meaning that they preferred, value today rather than value down the line. And those that picked the 2 marshmallows the next day had a low time preference. And when they actually reached out to these folks, 20, 30 years down the line, the economic outcomes of these participants varied greatly between the people that were low time preference and high time preference, in that, long-term thinking is something that it's created and set at an early age, and it's something that, has the biggest impact on your long-term outcomes. So, my question for you, Loren, is, I know how you apply this type of long-term thinking to your business and Shopify, but how are you applying these ideas of long-term thinking to your life personally?
I mean, I think it's very hard to do this on a regular basis. I think I'm a constant learner. Like, I read everything that comes out, related to business and sales and all this kind of stuff, because I'm constantly remembering that what I learned yesterday is probably already outdated. And if you're going to keep going, this is just to keep playing. And so you have to learn a lot. You have to ingest a huge amount of information, because you need to be consistently and over time triangulating your own knowledge set with the nature of what's happening around you, and be challenging your own beliefs. Does this in fact work this way? Is the assumptions I'm making about how things work, are they true? And if they're not, what new assumptions do I need to make as a result? And so I think, reading and learning are a way to stay infinite in a lot of cases, because it allows you to constantly ask yourself those questions. So the moment you stop and get static and say, oh no, the information I have is the information, this is the way it works, is when you switch back to a very finite set of realities. And so I think I've strived to be a learner.
I couldn't agree more. I think knowledge accumulation is life's greatest gift, honestly. And one of the things that Scott and I talk about a lot is this idea that people take 10 minutes to pick a book they're going to read and actually then invest the next week or so actually reading it. So there's sort of this issue in our society that there's a ton of leverage in flipping that equation, right? Like, if you spent more time really assessing which books you should devote, a week or so of your time to, you'd, end up accumulating the correct knowledge, the things that are more valuable to you in the long term. So my question for you here is, how do you select the knowledge that you devote your time to?
Yeah, I actually consume a bunch of different things all at once, meaning that I read books, both fiction and nonfiction. I read magazines, I read blogs, I read newspapers, I listen to podcasts. It's not a single thread, because I think voices come from everywhere. I learn a tremendous amount from Twitter, right? Now, people are going to be like, social media is so full of crap. Okay, fine. You got to be selective. But there is a lot of information being disseminated by people that changes my worldview and changes my perspective on things, or gives me alternate perspectives in a variety of sources. So I think, much like, I'm going to relate this to Shopify business, much like merchants need multiple channels to sell through to find their customers. So you might have your online store, a mobile store, social media, whatever it is. I think information consumption is multi-channel. It's like, if you're only getting your information from a single newspaper every day, you're getting no information. If you're only reading nonfiction, you're getting less information than you could, right? So adopting and nurturing and cultivating a multi-channel approach to information ingestion is probably the best way to see all of the angles.
Loren, what do you think your biggest challenge will be 6 months from now?
People. 6 years from now, 600 years from now, 6,000 years from now, the hardest thing for companies to manage are humans. Humans are the most complicated, most diverse, most change-oriented entity in business. Period, full stop, nothing else is even close. And so The infinite game is actually about humans more than anything else. If you want to be an infinite company, you have to be really good at leading and managing humans, because humans are what make companies go. Like, most companies are just collections of humans who have agreed to go in a direction for some period of time. Right? They've agreed to play along. Well, if you're going to be here forever, you're going to need to make sure those humans want to play along forever. That's hard because we go through crazy things, right? We are going through one of them right now. We have a pandemic. We have political unrest. We have social unrest. We have a bunch of, arguably in my lifetime, the hardest leadership moments in history are right now. We are living in them full stop. And so being able to lead, to engage, to inspire, to storytell, to create the conditions for people to be successful is and has always been and always will be the most challenging aspect of business. Customers are easy compared to the humans that you work with.
Loren, I love that answer, and I think it's so relevant because, when I look at 2020 and COVID and all those crazy black swan events that have occurred recently, I can't help but think that it's significantly increased the opportunity cost associated with being an employee. And, I'm not saying that because there are more jobs now or because everyone should be, an entrepreneur, but I do think that COVID has forced people to reevaluate all the different avenues of their lives. The things they spend their time doing, where they live geographically, the relationships they have with their family, whether or not they're happy. And by removing the social element, right, not having the ability to go out and see all of your friends and your community, it's also giving these people a lot of time to actually think about these things, to be introspective. And in a society that usually operates on short-term goals and instant gratification, that type of thinking doesn't really happen too often, but it's happening at scale right now across the globe. And this type of thinking, allows people to kind of zoom out and open the lens of focus in a way that causes them to consider a ton of different life paths that they hadn't considered in the past or they felt weren't realistic. So it's almost like a ton of companies have been put on notice, since it's never been more important for companies to ignite employees, make them feel like their employers are invested in their growth, and that they feel like they're a part of these big, ambitious corporate or startup missions.
You're making a great point, which is every company is being asked hard questions by their employee base right now. Who are you? What do you care about? Why should I spend my time with you? And if you can't answer those questions, if you can't help your employee base see how they're valued, see how they're connected to the mission, understand the why of what they're doing, not just the what. If you can't engage those people all the time, this isn't a one-time event, they will choose other things. And the failure of most organizations has not been their products. It has been their ability to keep people inspired, to keep on the path with them. And so most companies get dismantled by their employees from the inside because they just don't buy into the mission anymore, or they don't see themselves as part of it, or the company gets disconnected and sees it as only a product discussion versus a product and a human discussion. And so all companies need to be very careful forever about how they engage with their employees. Because if they don't do it well, their employees have infinite choice. They can start their own thing, they can go do something else, they can work for somebody else. And so companies who survive the long term are those who build the best people, not the best products.
Amen. What you just said is a very common theme amongst a lot of the executives and leaders that we have on the show. And it's could not be more true. Well, Loren, we got to wrap up here, but we're so grateful for having you on the show. I feel like there could have been 10 mini episodes inside of one episode based on some of the different knowledge bombs that were dropped today. So we're super grateful for you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been fun. It's been a good time. So thanks.
Awesome. Well, for everybody listening, we're grateful for you too. If you like today's episode, you can go ahead and leave us a good old 5-star on iTunes, and we'll see you on the next show. Thanks, everybody.